I realized that this wasn't what I thought I was looking at.
Did you touch it at that point, or?
Well, all I did was walk up to it. I was within 3 feet in front of it when I had knocked it down. And at that point, once I realized that this wasn't a mask, it wasn't human, but it was human looking. It was human in size. It was human in the dimensional shape.
It seems on the pictures on Art's website to look as if it's wearing something.
Yes, that was one I was going to get to. The head, the shots of the head of the alien are very clear, and they move down into what almost appears to be some kind of black cloth or clothing. Can you?
It was a black type of suit made of some type of material, but nothing that I had ever seen. Almost a tight-fitting body wrap type of material, almost like spandex.
Was it a tailored suit or more like, or what?
It was tight-fitting, tight, all the way tight against its neck, torso, legs, feet, all one piece, as far as I could see.
Was anything wrong with its neck at the point that it was lying on the ground?
Was anything wrong with its neck?
Yeah.
As in broken?
Well, yeah.
Not that I could tell at that point. At a later examination, it didn't appear to be broken.
Because in one of the photographs, I think the first photograph that's on the website, it sort of appears that there's something wrong with the neck. It's hard to tell if it was broken or not. I just wanted to know.
As far as I know, it wasn't.
All right.
To other examination that happened later.
All right. Now, let's get to that. The time passes. Finally, you somehow, I guess, collect your senses and decide what your course of action is going to be. What do you do, Doctor? Do you walk away? And as you walked away, or did you...
I started to walk away. I started to grab my pack and think that it was getting late, and if I was going to get out of the woods before it was dark, I was sick. I didn't know if I was going to get sicker. I had injured my hand that felt like a burn.
That was when you slapped the object?
Yes.
Yeah.
Jonathan also thought of burying the creature.
Right. At that point, I thought, well, if I, maybe I should just bury this.
Were you concerned about
I should hide it?
Things like the law or...
Well, everything went through my mind.
Yeah.
Thinking about what have I done? Is it a crime? Is anybody going to believe this? Can I hide it from animals so that later I could come back and show someone?
Oh yes.
I didn't have a shovel. I didn't have any tools with me. I had a pocket knife. At that point, I made a decision that maybe I could cover it with a thermal blanket that I had, and put rocks around it, and possibly preserve it till I came back with some help.
Makes sense, all right.
At that point, I started looking for rocks. Every rock I found was buried so deep or connected to other rocks that there wasn't anything I could find to do it.
All right.
I made a determination that if I rolled it up, if I actually pushed this being into the thermal blanket and rolled it around it, that maybe I could put branches against it or something else. Well, in moving it, I found out that it was extremely light. It had very little weight to it. In fact, I rolled it up like a burrito in the blanket. And as I picked it up to carry it, to find some place to put it in the area, I just started walking.
So in other words, it was actually light enough that you could carry it reasonably.
It was approximately 50 pounds.
There was also a very strange time element involved with contact with the obelisk. Originally, he had ripped his shirt. Something happened with the obelisk. Now, the hours that should have existed no longer existed. In other words, he was there, he knew he was there, or felt he was there for at least 3 hours. But what ended up happening was only a short period of time had gone by, and there was a time where it seemed like he was actually somehow enveloped by the obelisk. When he was finished with that episode, his shirt was no longer torn.
We'll get to the shirt in just a second. That's fascinating. But let me ask you, just for clarification, did 3 hours pass on your watch, and some of that time you can't seem to account for? Or did it seem like 3 hours, but actually turn out to be a much shorter time on your watch?
The watch I was wearing stopped.
Naturally.
And I don't know exactly what time.
All right, then if I understand this correctly, you had the alien wrapped in the thermal blanket that is, by the way, the background for the photographs that we've got here. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right. And you carried this creature away, wrapped up. Meanwhile, in the background, the obelisk, this thing, is still hovering in the air, and that's the last you saw of the obelisk.
That's correct.
Have you since been back to that location?
We went back. I took my best friend back the next day, and we went back to this location, and there was not one thing out of place in this entire area.
All right, you then hiked. You've got how many hours to get back to your vehicle?
About an hour and a half.
So you carried this creature for an hour and a half?
Yes, stopping along the way.
Stopping occasionally.
To think about putting it somewhere, hiding it somewhere.
But you kept going?
I just kept going.
All right, you got the creature into your car.
I threw it in the back of my car.
And drove where? Straight home?
Drove home.
Drove home. Now, when you got home, what did you do?
Well, driving home gave me some sense of serenity, like I had come back to the real world. Mm-hmm. And, home felt like comfort.
Yeah, but with a bit of a souvenir.
Right, and when I got home, I sat in my carport, looking in the rearview mirror, seeing the silhouette of my burrito in the back.
Burrito.
Thinking, what am I going to do with this? Well, I'll bury it tomorrow. Maybe all this is a bad dream. And so after that, I went in the house for a while, and I decided I can't just leave this in my car. I even thought about the fact if somebody broke into my car and found this, that would be a surprise. So I decided that I would put it in my garage, in my freezer. As odd as that sounds, at that point I felt it was a piece of meat, and I needed to put it somewhere out of sight. And I could lock the freezer.
Preserve it. So you locked it in your freezer?
Yes.
Yeah, he really didn't want to bring it into his house.
I understand, believe me. Looking at it here, I understand that completely. So how long did it spend in your freezer?
Till the next morning when I decided to look again.
Now, at what point did you bring the video camera out again and the camera and begin to take photographs of this creature? When did that happen?
That was approximately 9 hours after after the event, and I had gotten it home.
The video, Whitley, and I hope you don't mind, Doctor, my describing.
Go right ahead.
The video shows the creature wrapped up, as he said, like a burrito, and it actually starts being unwrapped. In other words, he starts unwrapping it. This is now at home. And they go through a series of... was that you in the video, Doctor?
Yes.
Okay. Opening the mouth, moving the face, moving the head back and forth, opening the eyelids, that sort of examination. It shows that in the video.
Who was handling the video camera at that time?
I was.
Who was?
I was.
So you must have had it on a tripod or something?
Actually, I duct taped the side of a ladder.
Okay.
And when I shot the section where I showed the wound, I put it on top of a box.
On the top of a box, yeah, that's right. It would be fairly close, so it would, that makes sense. So here we are. You've now documented by video and by 35 millimeter photography. The creature and what you call the obelisk, not necessarily, folks, the ship. That was our mistake in interpretation, calling it a ship. It's not necessarily a ship. It was something, an obelisk, something. So, Doctor, who did you tell about this?
Well, the first thing I did after I got home was try to gain a little composure. And then I sat down and thought about calling my girlfriend, which I called. She wasn't home. And then I called my best friend, and I had left a message with him. I said, call me immediately as soon as you get home. Mm-hmm. He called me later, and I told him to come over because I had something I needed to see him. And I showed him.
That must have been some experience for your friend.
Yeah, to put it lightly. I was still quite sick at the time, and I think it was traumatic from every standpoint.
Gary was a bit more functional, and Gary was the one that pretty much said this is an alien. It was something that at this time Jonathan absolutely did not want in any way to think of. It's not where he wanted to go.
Okay, now we've got another witness, Gary. Somebody named Gary. That's your best friend, right?
Gary was my best friend for 15 years.
Are you still in contact with Gary?
Gary has been missing for the last 2 years.
Oh, my. All right.
If you're out there, Gary, you know how to get a hold of me.
All right. Do you suspect Gary's on the run, has met with foul play? What?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I do know that we went through an enormous amount of incidents after this.
What sort of incidents?
Incidents where we were trying to find out what to do with this. I was trying to make some sense out of it. I had basically decided that I had killed something, that I could be very, very seriously in trouble. Mm-hmm. Gary kind of took the lead and said, no, this is something else. This is something very important. Mm-hmm. And then I said, well, we need to go to the police. He said, no, we don't. That's the first thing you don't want to do. And then we went down that path of what do we do? Who do we talk to?
Sure.
We made several phone calls to some of the bigger organizations.
Like what?
Such as MUFON.
MUFON. You called MUFON?
Yes. Peter Davenport in Seattle.
You called Peter Davenport?
Yes.
And what response did you get from Peter?
Well, when we were calling, at that point, we were calling fairly anonymously. We were saying, what if we had this? Very similar to the fax that was sent to you, Art.
All right.
And we were gingerly trying to test the waters of where to go.
What if we had a body?
And some of the response that we got was very disturbing from the standpoint of, people wanting to come and, tear this thing apart and tear your life apart. And, do you have this? Do you have that?
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you right now 2 questions. One, do you retain any physical evidence at all?
Other than the photographic evidence?
Uh-huh.
No.
Right. How long did you retain custody of this alien body?
10 days.
10 days. On the 10th day, what happened?
Well, I think there needs to be something said prior to that.
All right.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
We had brought this extraterrestrial home in the event to have something done with it. Something so that somebody could put some sense to all of this. I didn't want to kill it, but I did it out of fear. I did it out of frustration for what I had just witnessed. And I felt terrible, and I still do. But I brought it home, I saved it, I put it in the freezer. We went through the process of trying to find out what to do and who to go and who to talk to. And no one would believe us. No one would believe the seriousness of this.
You mean among your friends or?
Among some of the professionals that I talked with.
The UFO people? Or?
Yes. I talked to several people through the university. I talked to a professor that I knew specifically as a friend. I tried to set up meetings with him. Things started to happen. He told me he would come and look. I then received a phone call several hours later, and this was predetermined that he would come over and look at this. All of a sudden, his tone changed. He canceled the appointment. No reason given. Mm-hmm. This started to happen one after the other. Then we realized there were people watching the house.
Dr. Reed, at that point, hold on, please. All right. Dr. Jonathan Reed is the man you're listening to at the moment. Robert Wraith is here, and so is Whitley Strieber. I'm Art Bell, and this is Coast to Coast AM. All right, back now to our guests, Robert Wraith, Dr. Jonathan Reed, and Whitley Strieber. Gentlemen, welcome back. I want to ask one quick question of you, Doctor, and you, Robert. The 3 photographs that I now possess that I put on the website, not everybody has a computer, and we have a newsletter that we publish. We have put your copyright, your name on these photographs. Would you give us permission to put these in the newsletter as well?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right. Your house, Doctor, you become aware, is being watched.
It's being watched. It seems like every time we have made arrangements to go anywhere, we're being followed. This escalated to a degree where we both became very, very paranoid, and also it became dangerous.
In what sense?
Well, we almost got run off the road twice by, a vehicle, a big dark blue van. Mm-hmm. The incident that before the break, I was trying to say, is that after we did the topical examination, and I made the video, a few days went by where we started to set up some appointments to do another examination with like I said, another professor, so that I could make some choices on what to do.
Sure.
When some of those arrangements were canceled, I was very frustrated. I was angry. And in preparing for that, I had put a table out and, a place to do this examination.
Sure.
At that point, I put everything away and was closing things down in my garage when I noticed a sound coming from what I thought was underneath my freezer. A thump sound.
Oh, boy.
I thought it was the compressor going out.
Right.
And I thought, if this happens, I'm going to be stripping my refrigerator and putting this in there. Where I thought it was rats.
Sounds like something from Alfred Hitchcock. All right.
I'm telling you, this is chilling. It's really
at that
chilling.
point, I went to investigate. I found that there wasn't any rats, and the compressor seemed to be okay. I heard sounds, and I opened the freezer, and Freddie, which is what we took to calling him, was not dead.
What?
He was still alive and moving and screaming.
At this point, I'd be screaming.
I slammed the freezer,
Oh, my God.
ran into the house. As
Jonathan?
Yes.
Do you have that audio handy?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, this is audio from the totality of the videotape runs about how long, gentlemen?
About 6 minutes in each segment.
And it should be said that this was taken in the woods, most of it. And it was jerky, and you were running at times, and other times you stopped for at least a moment and got a good clear shot, and then running again.
Yes, exactly. I think what the audio Robert is speaking of is the audio that I recorded of the alien screaming.
You have that?
Yes, I do.
You can.
My hand.
You have that in your hand?
Yes, I do.
All right. Would you please go ahead now and, though it's not the best way to do it, hold the phone up and play that audio for us?
Okay.
From the tape.
It was, it's the sound of opening the freezer, the noise, and closing the freezer.
All right, go right ahead. All right, that was that was somewhat hard to distinguish. Was that a scream? Certainly, there was a background. I could hear something open. I could hear.
It was just the sound of this extraterrestrial screaming, opening the freezer and closing the freezer.
You must have a good, strong heart, Doctor.
Naturally,
that longer.
That wasn't taken the first time he had gone out there.
No, that was done later.
To check when you heard the thumping in the freezer. That was done later as Jonathan actually attempted to communicate with the alien.
Oh, you did?
Well, I attempted to see if it was still alive.
My God. So now you've got a live alien with a terrible head wound in your freezer, which has apparently come back to life, or maybe it never died, hard to say which.
Well, obviously it didn't die.
Yeah, obviously it didn't die. And obviously the freezer didn't kill it.
Well, that's kind of a mystery. I would have assumed that without, an excessive amount of air and the freezing temperature that it would have...
If it wasn't dead, it would be dead.
But I did notice during the examination that the tissue had changed around the wound. It seemed almost like it had adhered back in position. Now, I took that for just the way things freeze. When you freeze something that is wet, it sticks.
It seems as though the freezer was actually, for some reason, the elements of the environment were somehow conducive to its healing. Somehow it was...
Hey, I don't have all the answers.
Yeah, but somehow it was allowing this creature to heal. And there's no way of understanding exactly how that could be or what it really means.
I'm speechless, frankly.
Yeah, so am I. All right, so the last time, this is something the police would ask. When was the last time you saw this creature?
9 days from the date that I encountered it to the date that I no longer had it.
All right, then I'm wrong. I'm not understanding the timeline. Tell me how many days it was when you opened the freezer and this alien was alive.
3.5 days.
3.5 days. 3.5 days. And so you closed...
I had taken it out of the freezer several times during that time.
I understand.
Okay, doing the examination and put it back in and wrapped it back up.
I can imagine that. And then from the time that it apparently reanimated, I'll use that term, and you slammed the freezer shut and locked it, There were, about how many more days elapsed?
Well, it was a total of about 3.5 days to that point.
Okay, did you open it again, or did
Yes,
you?
I did.
You did?
Yes, I did.
And what did you observe?
Well, I observed that it, in fact, was still moving, but very quietly, not as fast, very, very slow, that it seemed to be injured. It wasn't, in good shape.
Not after being in the freezer that long.
Well, or hit on the head.
Or hit on the head, right.
But it was alive. And that is about the time when other things started happening, which eventually I lost control of the body.
Okay, how did the body come up missing? When did you suddenly realize it was missing? What circumstances can you tell us about?
Well, during the time when all this was going on, there was a lot happening. We were trying to make some logistics to move different pieces of evidence, to secure them in different areas, because I was under the assumption that somebody had been through the house. And at that point, I didn't trust anything. So I divided the evidence into different groups and placed them in what I felt was secure places. Later on,
you say the evidence, what do you mean?
Photographic evidence.
Mm-hmm.
I had different, some of the evidence which Art has. I had some other videotape of the creature in the garage moving alive, which I no longer have.
Doctor, you're lucky to be alive. Did you ever attempt to remove this creature's clothing?
During the second examination, which I made with my friend, we went over the body very, very carefully. And I documented everything. We photographed it.
Did you remove the clothing, the black clothing?
We attempted to. And in doing so, I used an X-Acto knife and made a slice in the material.
Right.
And the material almost liquefied as I cut it and rejoined itself.
Oh, my.
There was a point where he went to cut it again, and it was a longer cut, and then again it came together, and then on the third time, it just disallowed him cutting it at all. Part of the clothing had actually adhered to the knife and just wouldn't let him cut it.
So, when did you realize that the alien was suddenly gone?
Well, on approximately the 9th day, we knew that we were being followed, that our houses had been gone through. At that time, I had some other friends helping me, and they were in the same boat where they knew they were being watched. People were pursuing them, watching every move. They thought people had been in their house. At that point, I made a trip to secure some of the last photographs that I had taken to another location, and at that point I drove back home, and as I drove home I realized that there were 3 vans in front of my house, and people were going into my house. I continued and never stopped, and came back a day later to find my house ransacked, and there were holes in the floor. There were holes in the walls. They had gone through everything that I had had. They had taken all the evidence that I had at my house. And I walked to the garage and opened the door, which had been removed from the hinges, set aside. And I walked in, and the freezer was gone.
The entire freezer?
The entire freezer was gone.
My Lord. And so that's...
and that's the last time
you saw the creature.
I saw anything to do with that.
And so, did you call the police?
considering everything that had been happened, and I had talked with a policeman a few days earlier, that was a futile effort. They didn't believe anything, little green men.
You say you spoke with Peter Davenport, and I spoke briefly.
Actually, Gary spoke with Peter Davenport.
Gary spoke with Peter Davenport. All right. And when he spoke with him, can you recall about when that was?
Well, it was about 2 days after we had brought it home.
So let's see. The original.
It was about the 17th.
About the 17th. All right.
Now, I know at that time, Gary did not give his name, but he did inquire about what if, what would you recommend doing?
Uh-huh.
I think the information given was, well, if it's real, you need to contact the authorities. You need to contact, somebody who can come down and do this and look at this.
Mm-hmm.
We were both doing things at the same time. I was talking to other people through different means, different people through the university, trying to get somebody to come and look. But like I said, the doors were being closed as fast as we were opening them.
Mm-hmm. I understand. All right. This is just an amazing story, and I think that from here, if you are willing to have the negatives examined, and you say you are.
Yes. We've, I have gone through this process before, and I will provide, the evidence under the right circumstances.
All right.
I have had 3/4 of the evidence taken from me, lost. What I have left is very little in comparison to what I had. This is one of the reasons I'm talking with you.
I understand, to get this on the record. Well, what we have won't go away, that's for darn sure. Whitley,
when we examine, the Community Foundation does work like this, when the evidence is so sensitive, the witness comes with the evidence and is there the whole time.
so we will arrange through Whitley, through Peter Davenport, through move on through other organizations. We have lots of resources. Doctor, we will contact you. We will contact Robert Wraith, and I guess you're somewhat incommunicado for obvious reasons, and we can contact you through Robert. Is that correct?
Yes.
Whitley, anything else?
Only that it's a very interesting and extraordinary story, one that deserves another program, and we need to put our heads together and figure out exactly what else we want to ask the doctor, because there are
other
critical
questions.
points
Yes,
that
I
have not
agree.
been covered.
I absolutely agree. Gentlemen, both of you, would you be willing to do another program next week?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a yes from both.
Yes.
We have a phone number and an address too. If people want to write to it and ask some questions.
Okay, we don't have a lot of time, so if you have a phone number, go ahead and give that out.
Okay, it's San Diego UFO Society, and the phone number is area code 619-299-9157.
Let me see if I've got that right. Say it again, 619.
299.
Right.
9157.
San Diego UFO Society.
Yeah, and it's P.O. Box 34351, San Diego, California 92103.
All right. I think for tonight we have as much of the story as we can get. People can follow up with telephone calls and or by writing. Give that address one more time, please.
The address is P.O. Box 34351, San Diego, California 92103.
Well, it's an amazing, amazing breaking story. I'm honored that you would come here to tell that story. Whitley, thank you for your assistance. I will reschedule a show for all of us next week to follow up with more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bell.
Thank you very much, Art.
Good night, Art.
Good night, all.